Hey Craig, thanks for getting these in, and like I said, thank you again for the extremely high quality file size. I really like being able to enlarge these full size and seeing every detail. It's just wonderful. So here are your 4 finals, and normally my feedback would first be like, oh, don't forget to get your background out of the depth of field because it gets really visually distracting. But then I was like, oh God, that's a tiny spot, and you explained how you ended up traveling to their house, so you're a traveling photographer, which happens. And so you really, you had to work with the space that you had. So just a tip for you, typically traveling photographers use paper backdrops, and I'll tell you why, is because a lot of times you're in a tight space and you can't get them out of the depth of field, and you don't want these pesky wrinkles showing up, and the paper backdrops are brilliant for being smooth and seamless and wonderful. They're actually called seamless backdrops, but they're made of paper, so I say paper, but when you go looking for them at a store or online, they're called seamless backdrops. And that'll be a really helpful tool. They're actually not very expensive, so you can probably pick up a few of those, like a black one, a white one, maybe a medium gray one, and you'll be very happy with your possibilities with those. Because this textured this textured backdrop is just kind of, it just takes away from the images, and because the kids are just so fantastic, right? We just really want to look at them. But I keep on looking at the background. And the lighting's great. I think what you're doing here is high-key lighting. You have a very low ratio, so because you're using both of these lights. One, you're shooting back into the umbrella, and one is a hard light. But ultimately, it ends up being rather high-key. So it works for these kids, showing their energy, their vitality, their innocence. So it's actually working out really well. So my next bit of feedback would be 2 other things. Start to pay much closer attention to your composition. So far I've seen a pattern where you want to have a lot of space above your subject's head and to the sides, and this space isn't helping inform the image at all. And then you're cutting them off pretty low here. What you can do is change the format of the way that you're shooting your cameras, and by that I mean turn your camera up on its side. Right now your image is much wider than it is tall. And for this particular subject, it would have made more sense to shoot much taller than you are shooting wide. This is called landscape format, the wider than tall. What you want to use, usually when your subject is standing up like this and is in more of a longer rectangular form, is what's called portrait format. So the image is going to be taller than it is wide. And that way you don't have all this pesky empty space. And yeah, so that's it. I would say watch the composition, pay attention to what you're seeing in the frame. This one isn't so problematic. Like, this actually makes sense because the subject's also the football. But here, there's just a lot of empty space that we don't need. It's not helping the image at all. This little bit of a cut-up chair, that's not helping the image at all. This one actually makes more sense. This works, but this one, too much empty space. However, let me point out again that your lighting is lovely. You did a fantastic job in a tiny spot. And the only thing that you're getting from lighting here that's not working for you is this, and the boy specifically, is this really hard shadow with the bright orange reflected back into his skin in both images of him right here. And that happens. You have to be careful when your clients wear really bright clothing. That color will get reflected back into their skin. So what you have to try to do is don't have don't use the light in such a way that a shadow is cast that's perpendicular to the fabric, because those perpendicular shadows will have the color of the fabric saturating them. So you just would have had to move the angle of the light so to fill in this shadow a little bit more. That's about it, though. Other than that, these look great. Again, thank you for the high quality size. Plenty of information here with your exposure settings. I'm surprised these came out as well as they did, frankly, at 1/30th and 1/20th, 1/45th of a second. Usually our cutoff for human subjects is 1/60th of a second. We don't shoot at shutter speeds slower than 1/60th of a second because you will see it in the image if your subject moves. So these came out really well at these slow shutter speeds. Okay, thanks, Craig.